good evening, and welcome to Good News Catholic Communications, Catholic Perspective. I'm your host, Betty Ann Lazarus. My guests are Father Ronald Holder, OP, Diocesan Youth Coordinator, Mr. David Anthony Hopkin, a member of the Diocesan Liturgical Committee, and as well Miss Kimala Francis, a member of the youth arm of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul Society. We are here this evening because we recognize that as parents, as church, as education officials, as guardians, we have no doubt that the observance of Lent is somewhat overshadowed, and there can be a number of reasons. So wherever you are joining us from, it is a pleasure to be sharing this program with you, which is meant to be interactive. I see so many persons are already on Zoom, and I feel encouraged by your presence. So our viewers, you can make comments via Facebook or direct line contact 435-0143. So to begin with, I'll ask the guests to introduce themselves, then we'll take a break and come right to the crux of the matter. Lent. Are we feeling that season? What can we do? How can parents encourage children? How can Catholic institutions encourage that presence of Lent? So we'll get back to that. Father Ronald Holder, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. And good to be able to speak to especially our young people. I hope some of our young people are listening, but to speak to everyone as we try to reflect on this whole issue of Lent.
Miss Kimala Francis.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me here. I am no authority on youth on the whole island, but I will give my perspective and of course share the experiences of others as well.
Thank you. Mr. David Hopkin.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, all those who are listening online as well as on TV. David Hopkin, member of the Diocesan Liturgical Commission, and I think the whole season of Lent begins from the liturgy.
Okay, we'll be back. We're going to be recognizing at some point in time interactions with our viewers on Zoom. So we'll take a break and we'll be right back. The Diocese of St. George's in Grenada presents its 2022 series of Lenten Mission, March 21st to 25th, 7 p.m. nightly. This year's mission will be guided by the theme, "Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me," reflecting on the scripture, Matthew 25:31-46. Mark your calendar. Monday, March 21st, Sacred Heart, Petite Martinique. Tuesday, March 22nd, St. Patrick's, Hillsborough, Carriacou. Wednesday, March 23rd, Christ the King, Grand Roy. Thursday, March 24th, Blessed Sacrament, Grand Anse, culminating on Friday, March 25th, St. Martin de Porres Roman Catholic Church, Crochet, St. Andrew. The 2022 Lenten Mission, March 21st to 25th. We look forward to journeying together. Streaming live on all Good News Catholic Communications platforms. Welcome back. Welcome my guests. Welcome our viewers. Welcome participants on Zoom. And one of the admiration and something that I hold very close to my heart about my Catholic faith, I should say, is the observance of various seasons throughout the liturgical year. One such season is Lent, which begins on Ash Wednesday and ends on sundown on Holy Thursday. Am I correct, Father Ronald? Okay, and we are in discussion tonight because we are concerned. No doubt, the observance of Lent in 1930 or 1940, 1960, 1970, 1990 is by comparison totally different somewhat to today. To start the ball rolling, Father Ronald, there is concern among parishioners, among faithfuls. I'm not too sure if that stems from the fact that we came from 2020, 2021 under COVID regulations and lockdown. But the reality is, in 2022, we are seeing an explosion of freedom, an explosion of, we're wondering, there's a fast pace going where, I don't know, and we are wondering, are people really retreating to the wilderness? So first I want to introduce you to the concerns that is out there by, deeply concerned persons. And further on, we're going to get to, can the church afford to operate by just some notices on the bulletin or the parish in keeping with all the trends that are leaving us? I introduce you to your open comments on the entire issue.
I think we need to address first and foremost, as you said, we're coming out of a two-year lockdown and restrictions and controls, to the point whereby now that things are being lifted, or if not, maybe in a sense from all appearances, now that in a sense the mask can now gradually in a sense become off and we can get back to some freedom, even though I'm not sure if, according to health realities around the world, because we hear China is being locked back down again in terms of some cities, etc. So this virus and this pandemic is not fully over yet, even though people like to believe that. But I think we, coming out of that, people are, what we're finding is, number one, a freedom that people didn't have for the last 2 years. Because imagine, as human beings, we're not accustomed to lockdown. We're not accustomed to restrictions. Even if you say lockdown maybe for a week or maybe a few days, and then we get back to normal, like a state of emergency, and there be some limited controls, but not the level of lockdowns we've had, not the level of whereby you couldn't even move from your home. If you went out of your home, you had to do so under heavy disguise, heavy in terms of mask and controls, and had to line up and go into shop, and then you come out. And I don't think Hurricane Ivan or any earthquakes, any scenario we've had a situation like this, right? And so coming out of this, people have, as you said, discovered a newfound freedom that they didn't have in these past 2 years, and so they're enjoying it, and they're going to go to the max to make sure that we are free again, and thank God, and we can enjoy ourselves and go do whatever we want to do. It is therefore interesting that, I say interesting, maybe strange that, maybe strange is not the word I should use, but we have, at the time when this lockdown is, all of the restrictions are being lifted, Lent has begun. And therefore people are not into Lent, because Lent is a sort of having to to go back into oneself, and one would say, well, haven't we not done that for the last 2 years? So as a result, why should I be doing that now? So I think that is the first part of it. But the second and more key aspect of this is the fact that how many persons are disconnected from God. And that is a concern that, as church and all of us, we have to raise the question: how many people are disconnected from God? From the perspective that, the mindset is that God watches over us, God protects us, God is the one who looks after us, God is the one who ensures that everything, and once we have that relationship with Him, everything is fine. Now that is the notion that, in a sense, most people believe, and that's maybe a notion that the church has had that we taught and we help people to understand. But now that this crisis has happened, people are now asking the question, well, where is God in all of this? Why would God allow this? why would God bring us to this point of lockdown and control and all of that? And especially our young people are asking that question. And so the issue would therefore be, well, where is God in all of this? Is God for real? All right, and so there are a lot of people, especially young people, who are raising these concerns, because at the end of the day, they're thinking, well, if God really loves us and God is watching over us and God is taking care of us, and then all of a sudden we have to go into this 2-year, crisis, which is not over yet, then is there really a God?
Okay, we'll come back to raise some of the points that you made. Let me introduce Ms. Kimala Francis. I would ask you directly, it may not be a feeling and it may very well be so. Are you into the Lenten observance? Are you feeling it? Are you aware that the church is currently or has begun its Lenten journey? I mean, your opening sentiments on the issue at hand.
Of course, allow me to reiterate that I am no authority on the mass of the youth, of course. But I can give you a hint of what myself and others have been thinking. And at current, no. I personally, I do not feel the Lent as I would before. Some of my colleagues do not feel it as well. But we are aware that the church is in a period of Lent. And I must say that Father Ronald made an important point that I think we can really look at as well. He said we were already in a period of reflection and we have come out to just do. And I think actually a group of young people and I, we thought of that, we reflected, and it seems as though what we reflected on was not singularly dealing with God, but our life, living, our opportunities, what we can and cannot do. Oh, before I used to do this, you know what? I think I'm ready now. I'm ready to go and study. I'm ready to do things because, if something happens again, what can I make of my life? So we did do the reflection, but I think our path was probably not one that the church would consider to priority, God in itself. But I don't think generally that everybody is, why would God allow this? Some may be asking that, but others are just, God is good. God gave us life. We have this ability. Let's go forth and let's go study. Let's travel the world. Let's see. Why should I stick myself here in my little country and not know what's happening in the rest of the world? So I think these are the ideas that are coming out from the young people. We want to do. It may not be the type of activities that are very leading us to a solemnity with God, and so others may, some may of course, but I think that's the general idea coming from the perspective of the youth.
Well, thank you. I'll introduce Mr. David Hopkins. We will get back to some of the points that you raised. Mr. David Hopkins, you heard the introduction, you heard the first two opening comments. What's your take on, are we really feeling that Lenten journey?
With regards to the last question, how I'm feeling, yes, to some extent. I guess because I'm involved in liturgy, so I am aware that Lent is there, and it's here, and I'm trying my best to do what I can personally, and trying to get my parishioners to get involved as well. But I think we have a lot to do. And I'm saying a lot to do because maybe doing things differently. Father Ronald spoke about, what I gathered from his comments, is that we have a more diverse population now than before. Before we had people who had that singular belief that yes, it's Lent, you felt it everywhere. But now we have many persons out there with different points of view. Yes, I believe in God, I believe God is there, I believe He's with me, but the religiosity, I'm not too much into it. So I may accept it, yes, but I'm not too into it. I think we need to the church have to be more present in a real way using the medium that we have, right? I think we're doing well with the medium right now. I would say congratulations to Good News Catholic Radio, Catholic Network, for the work that they're doing. But we need to change our mode of doing things in order to get that message out there to everybody about it. I'll just share one example that at St. Peter's, what we try to do to highlight the Stations of the Cross, we decided to start a series of sessions called My Faith Journey. All right, just as we journey with the cross, through the Stations of the Cross, let's listen to some person's faith journey. So we heard for the last 2 weeks, we've heard from some men who shared their journey from the time they began coming to church. Last week we had a Rasta man he was a Rasta, and because of a Lenten mission, he became Catholic, and he was baptized during Holy Saturday night. And he's sharing his faith journey during Lent. And I think when we bring some more meaning to some of those activities that we do in church, maybe we'll get the awareness built a bit higher.
Okay, it is a fact to my guests that and our viewers that we do not have the support of the secular media anymore. For instance, 10 years or 20 years ago, you would hear solemn songs during Lent. So it means that the onus is now on the home, Catholic institutions, and the church. Father Ronald, what do you think, what approach do you think can be taken in terms of addressing or redressing? Because yes, we came from 2 years of lockdown, but it's always like, what would Jesus do? This is the time. He organized in the garden, he fasted for 40 days, he gave up food, or his friends, the disciples. How do we really get that we are as church on this journey?
I think we have to start with, first and foremost, connecting with people. And I'm saying connecting with people. Yes, everybody's connecting and reconnecting right now still, and everybody's like, hi, how are you? And everybody's meeting. But I think connecting in the context of touching a base with persons. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How has the last 2 years been for you? You know, I think the mental states, the mental thought process of people, we need to address that. I think, you know, in a sense, we have come straight out of lockdown, in a sense, and gone straight into freedoms and newfound, and, you know, but have we had a chance to connect with persons in terms of where they're at, what has been the last 2 years been for them, and the struggles and challenges and upheavals that they've had, you know, which they might still be dealing with, especially because as much as, yes, we're coming out of the lockdowns, there's still challenges, the financial challenge, there's still the health challenge, there's still other issues. So at the end of the day, I think we need to touch base with persons. Secondly, we need to there was a time when we would have, before lockdowns, we would have had the parish missions, right? Now, as much as the parish missions were dwindling, because as much as you had, you know, parish missions, but they were dwindling compared to years ago where you had parish missions and the churches were packed to the capacity, whereas, you know, in later years, they were not as full as they, especially, I think I remember in 2019, I didn't see that the numbers turning out as would have, you know, been in the past. But I think we need to get back to the parish missions, and in those parish missions, use the what you call outreach in the context of visiting people, connecting with people, seeing where they're at, and inviting them to come to church, and trying in that parish mission, in those parish missions, to help people have a connect, you know, in the context of you know, just being able to allow them to praise God, to sing, to worship, to create that sort of avenue and that environment where people can truly enter into that relationship, you know. So I think those are the two that I can think of in the context of, you know, again, connecting with people where they're at, you know, and then secondly, in the context of the parish missions, you know, trying to provide that avenue through which people can create that encounter.
Mr. Hopkins?
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Father Ronald is saying, connecting with persons, with people, but creating avenues to start a conversation. Simple things. I mean, it could be at work, it could be on the bus, it could be in your car. Something that can spark a conversation about the season or something like that. And I want to, because as I said earlier on that I'm into liturgy and this sort of thing. One of the churches that really inspires me is Beaulieu, Our Lady Help of Christians. And there's one thing that whenever I pass that church driving, you see a flag. Now that flag reminds me or tells me that there is something there that I need to be aware of. There, right now, if you pass there, you see a purple flag, right? And you know the Lent is on. Somebody else passing and say, "What they have this flag there?" It's a time for a conversation. Let's talk about the flag.
Yes.
You know, let's say, what is it all about? You know.
Interestingly, I interacted with someone at work, and I mentioned something about a Lenten mission, and the person said, "It's that time?" I said, "Yes." I said, "What do you know about Lent? Are you Catholic?" She said, "No, but I follow the things, the activities of the church."
There you go.
So I want to ask you, Father Ronald made the point about that disconnection. Is it a matter of parents and home? Because to support the church, we need the parents bringing up the children in the way of the faith and of the church. And what is it? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, let's see if I can address this in two parts. The first part about connecting, and allow me to just mention the St. Vincent de Paul Society. I'm wearing their jersey, and it's a charitable organization within the church that, although you may or may not have heard of the activities during the lockdown and so, we have been going about trying our best to connect with people. Of course, we focus more on the marginalized, so sometimes it may be the elderly, but of course those who are poor, vulnerable, we tried our best to connect through telephone calls. So this was done, and I think that was one way people tried to connect. And although they were not members of the society, people did, try to find out, "Hi neighbor, what's happening?" Somehow, it may not have been as we would have liked it, how we would have done it usually, but it was done somehow through the society, if I may add. Now, returning to the question of the home, if I can add my experience, and of course, this topic actually was discussed with some of my other young friends, and we said, when we were younger, we were well aware. I guess we felt it because we were taught that you should feel it. We were taught that you should do this. We were taught. And this would have done two things to us. One, we would have grown in it, so we grew liking it, loving it. That's actually one of the reasons I joined the St. Vincent de Paul Society. Because I grew up with my grandmother in Legion of Mary, attending Legion of Mary. So I understood, doing charity, doing things, helping others. But then another part of it led me to think, and others to think, after the lockdown, we were set free. I know it may seem strange, it may probably be something too blunt I'm saying, but I believe there are some of us who felt, less work, less having to be shoved. "Mommy, I don't want to go there." "No, you have to. This is, we are going to church." And it's very twofold. Now, I honestly do not have a solution as to why some of us, the young, we are just, I'm no longer interested. I think
the distractions are many.
Well, yes, of course. But I think if it's, as you grow, when you're a child, you may not understand really what's happening. But as you grow, sometimes you as the individual, you have to think, do I really want this? Do I really want to build my relationship with God? What can I do? And you continue on that track. So it's a very complicated set of paths, distractions, as you may add to it. And it's very interesting how I myself, personally, I'm not ashamed to admit there are times when I think, what? This lockdown may be good, I get a time to rest.
I want to make 2 points.
Concerning the disconnection, I really need to hear you as to why is there that disconnect? Why do you think there is such a disconnect?
Disconnect with the church
Children, parents, children, church.
I think the disconnect starts from the perspective of, number one, I often see, apart my thought, just the day I was saying to a couple I was preparing for marriage, we move from home to house. A lot of if you look around, you see a lot of houses, and houses is where people are just, in a sense, living. They're just taking shelter. As opposed to home, where there was love, joy, peace, happiness, connect, and there was a family.
In control.
Exactly, right? That no longer exists, right? Or it exists, but maybe limited, all right? You find a lot more scenarios where part of the problem too is that you find many of the parents now are maybe not mature enough, or may not have the skill set to help in bringing children up. And then in addition to that, I think parents, many of the parents now have come from a past whereby they were under heavy control, heavy undisciplined. And so in a sense now they've taken on a liberal approach, which means I am not going to apply this heavy-handedness to my children. So children have a lot more, in a sense, freedom, I think, as was in the past.
So it means that the church in itself cannot continue to operate the way it is. You can't just continue to put a notice in the bulletin, Station of the Cross is on Friday, Lenten mission is this week.
We're only getting some people, those who come to church, and even as one of my brother priests said yesterday in a clergy meeting, even when you go when the notices are being read, how many are listening, how many are viewing on the screens that you have, because again there's a disconnect. It's just more like, this is where, I'm just coming for, maybe because it's an obligation, I have to come to church, maybe because I have nothing else to do, so I come, and after that, that's it.
So does that call for a change of strategy?
It does, and that's why maybe in a sense our Holy Father Pope Francis has called the Synod into being, so at the end of the day we can take a look at where we are as church and how do we move forward given this present reality.
We want to remind our participants on Zoom that we would love to have you share your suggestions, comments, or participate in the discussion. As well, the lines are open, 435-0143. We would love to hear from you. Mr. Hopkins, how can we as church, and another aspect or angle we get into as well is our Catholic institutions, but let's leave that for Mr. Hopkins' contribution. How can we address the disconnect or bring our diocese under an umbrella of we are journeying at this time in Lent?
Right. A number of things, right? You mentioned earlier on that the secular media does not give the church that support, basically, in advancing the message of Lent. We cannot just sit back and say, oh, they're not giving us. We have to then engage them. If they don't have the news, let's give it to them so that they can show it. There are times we may have to put our money where our mouth is. We may have to really spend to do that. That's one. Father Ronald mentioned the issue of the family and what is going on. I'm thinking maybe some of them don't know the knowledge of the whole Lenten thing. They don't know.
The catechesis is lacking.
Yeah, it's lacking.
Yeah.
We have a group of persons who, for the last 3-4 years, who literally don't know the faith at all. And you cannot blame them for being in that position.
So back to the parents.
Fine. Even the parents, I'm talking about parents who don't know. I mean, some of them have not been to Catholic schools where they experience that kind of thing. And even those that would have been to Catholic school, maybe they were not taught those things even in the Catholic school, right? But I want to give an example of a deliberate effort that a parent in my parish used for this Lent. And practical things. No big. Every day she would do one aspect of Lent on a slip of purple paper, and she would make the son turn it into a chain. So at the end of the 40 days they expect to have a very long chain. Now it's exciting for that child to be engaged with his mother or his parents doing that little activity. At the same time he is learning. It is so impactful that he even asks questions about different things. I'll give you an example. One day he went to church and the priest was not there. and somebody else was doing the service, and he asked the mother, so we're not going to receive communion today? Wow. So those of us who are aware, we have to try practical things at home, and practical things in the school, and practical things even in the media, in our workplaces, and so on, to help advance the message.
And I think at the same time, I think, you know, another approach too as well is to be able to see how we can readapt our liturgical activities in such a way. There's some we may not be able to change, but there's some we can, for example, the Stations of the Cross. Are there new ways? We are so accustomed to the Stations of the Cross and walking around the church or doing crosses outside. Is there another method or another approach that we can take up that can help to demonstrate, you know, the Stations of the Cross? We're so accustomed to, for example, the fasting. Now, the churches, thank God for Pope Francis, who introduced the whole thought process of, can we fast from some of the sins that we are struggling with, you know. So these are some of the things that, you know, taking new approaches to some of the liturgical activities that can help to bring new zeal, new interest, new desire into participation.
Just a reminder to our Zoom participants, you can indicate by raising your hand that you would like to make a contribution, and we'll facilitate that.
Betty, there are two comments on Zoom. I guess I've tried with that. One said, excellent work, Sister Kamaya. SVP is at work in Geneva.
No, but it's true. SVP, I've realized, even as a member of SVP, now it's a bit of a challenge. We cannot necessarily promote ourselves, because what we try to do is to focus on our clients, on the marginalized. So we don't want to say, oh, hey, I'm giving this person this food, or I'm giving this person this job. But still, we would like to promote, we would like people to know, you know what, we are here, we are trying, and one of my functions is to encourage the young to join the SVP.
Okay.
That is a challenge, I must admit, but one of the things we have tried to project during the Lenten period, because we decided to use this period, is that, okay, instead of fasting from the meat, Father said, you know, our Pope Francis had said fasting from a sin, let's volunteer our time. You don't have to be a member of the SVP, but you can perhaps, let's say, ask an SVP member, will you be doing such and such activity? Would you like my assistance? And in that way, just little activities, you continue to join, and you would grow slowly. So one thing at a time. We're trying not to burden the young and say, you know, you must join this group, because, you know, we can be rebellious.
Okay, I want to throw out, very good, thank you.
There's another one. It says, we are forgetting the early formation. Yes, Father Ronald spoke
early formation. That's where we came in with parents. But you know, earlier on we mentioned the distractions. If the parents wanting time for themselves would easily leave a tablet or a laptop in the hands of the young ones, and they may spend 4 hours looking at Peppa Pig and la 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 la, or WhatsApping someone. So the early formation is part of the parental control as well. But I want to ask my guests, given the factors or given the circumstances that we have to deal with, okay, the distraction, the homes that are not not all, some of the homes that are not that strong, don't you think that there is a greater role for each and every group within the church? Who's taking the young ones on a Sundays? Who's inviting the young parishioners to come back on a Tuesday afternoon or a Thursday afternoon? And we have lots of groups in the church.
And that is where all of us have to play that part, but especially those, yes, in the church who are committed, who are devoted, who are, they would call the die-hard Catholics. we have to find a way to get them to yes, be open to this, getting back to this whole thought process of, in a sense, the children Sunday school, because it's very important at least to take the children out, because it's hard for priests to be able to focus on the children and then at the same time for the rest of the congregation. So I think it's important if the children can be taken out during the, for their session, their liturgy, and then come back in time for the Eucharist. I think it would be important in a sense if we can get back to Sunday school, finding a way to bring. Somebody was saying to me weeks ago, years ago you would have Sunday school, you come to church in the morning, right, then you go home and then you come back in the afternoon. Now, I mean, who are you getting to come out in the afternoon at this day and age, in terms of Sunday school? But let's see if we can find a new form of understanding of Sunday school in which we can help to provide that formation. So it is, I think this reality provides new ways of new approaches, how we can undertake in doing things as opposed to us being stuck to the way we did things in the past.
Okay, I was just thinking also, Father, in terms of the parents connecting with the church and how the COVID-19 would have impacted that process. Because, for example, for almost 3 years, you could not have had baptism already, and the active sessions and so on. And the parents also were bogged down with parenting in a different way.
An online school.
An online school. So there's so much that would have impacted where we are right now. And the whole situation of getting church even getting on board with what is happening. Are we left behind during this whole process? Are we on board? That kind of thing.
And which is why, again, the Synod, because the Synod hopefully will, in a sense, be able to provide, I use the word, answers through our discernment and through our listening, hopefully provide the type of answers that the Lord is inviting us. How do we approach this and how do we move forward? How do we speak to a lot of the situations coming out of these last 2 years, which has, in a sense, on one hand presented challenges and at the same time, on the other hand, being negative. So it's how do we approach this going forward?
But our Catholic institutions have a role to play.
Yep.
And we should have some principals on Zoom, and we would love if you can clock in with us, connect, so that we can hear from you as to. But earlier on this week, we visited the Bolio RC School, and that principal shared that their Stations of the Cross is every Friday. They have a Lenten corner.
Sure, right.
But there are some schools, Catholic schools, I would admit that there is no real presence really in terms of the observance of Lent. So I would like you to speak to the role of our Catholic institutions regarding the seasons of the church.
Okay. Well, I will start by saying what someone wrote on Zoom. I think the parish schools should be invited to take part in the Stations of the Cross. What I'm thinking is, I was a principal as well, right? And during my period as principal of St. Patrick's RC, I made sure that every season we had something to make the children aware that it is on and what they can do to participate and to get the meaning of it. So you have to be intentional about it, and you have to be precise as to what you want to do. You must feel the Catholic presence in a Catholic school. I must say that the St. Rose Modern Secondary, that's my alma mater, and I'm feeling that presence. When you get there, right? You feel that. St. Joseph Convent.
Can I add that every Friday, J.W. Fletcher Catholic Secondary School participates in the Stations of the Cross, and what we do, we have the students act out that particular station. Every time our principal, every time there is a change in the season in the church, he would mention it in the General Assembly. Now, I know for a fact there is a challenge, because within the classroom, you're meant to teach the Catholic religion, aspects of the Catholic religion, but you don't want to ostracize the other students who are in other religions who are not Catholics. When I say ostracize, correction of that. Okay, so probably ostracize may be too strong. Ostracize may be too strong, but you want them to understand but you also want the Catholic students to understand what do the other religions believe. At this time, do you have something similar to what we may
But
have?
I'll tell you, Ma'am, tell you, Ma'am, they are not afraid to impart their conviction or faith or whatever they believe in. They are not timid in imparting it to us.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And I support you, Betty, on that. I mean, we don't have to go in a very arrogant way to present, dogmatic way. Just as you mentioned, we say it in the assembly. I know of persons I've been to school with who are not Catholic, but they will tell you, my experience in Catholic school has helped me to be where I am. So what we want to do is create an experience of people within the school, where they experience a different kind of school,
because
where
to
faith and knowledge
meet. That's funny because
to support you, I have non-Catholic past students of St. Joseph's Convent, Grenville, who reminisce on songs that brought them closer together, that Sister Genevieve or Sister Maureen. And so I want to get to another very important aspect in this Lenten observance, the religious presence. We had more schools with religious sisters. We had more priests
From a number of what do you call it? Denominations, orders, and so forth. Could that be part of the reason why there is a disconnect? Why are we not feeling it?
I agree. If I can say,
Yes.
I think as Catholic schools, we're expected to have a manager from the Catholic board or so, but you don't tend to feel the presence of the manager. And I don't think I personally know the purpose or the function of the manager. I have to confess. So I think perhaps if we have a better connection, I'm going back to that word again, with the Catholic boards, and so in the school, probably even participating in a general assembly once a week to sort of let the students know, let the staff and the auxiliary know, this is what's happening, this is our function, we are here to support you in. So it may cause some sort of, oh, I'm in a Catholic school.
Well,
maybe,
see,
I'm not so. Sure.
This can be a challenge too, Betty. I mean, the fact is, look, we had to wait for Fanarada. A long day, right? We have few priests.
Yeah.
That's a fact. We have few nuns, our sisters, and the few we have, we cannot work them too much. That's why we have to be intentional with our activities in the schools, and do the simple things and start the conversation.
But I didn't get a clear sense of direction regarding all the groups in the church without straying from religious presence. I didn't get a sense of, like for instance, shortly after Christmas, what can the Mothers Union do?
What can SVP do? Because it is separate to the tangible, what can Men in the Footsteps of Christ, what can the youth group, what can be prior to the Lenten season?
I was going to respond to that earlier on, and it sort of went off my mind. The church groups, not now, but have been going through some issues before COVID. And some of them, I think they were literally dying. They needed some kind of injection, and COVID would have added some more issues with that. But we have to look at the structure of those groups. We have to look at some of the ideas. I would say go back to the ideals why the group was started in the first place, and bring it into our times, that kind of thing. But when you have those inactivity in those groups, it's hard to now bring in and ask them to do something.
So it's also a reflection of inactive groups within it.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Example of youth ministry, right? Many parishes don't have functional groups. Before the advent of the pandemic, there are a number of parishes that didn't have a functional group or functional ministry, and then with the pandemic, it just added to it. So quite a number of, I would say, majority of parishes don't have functional youth activities, right? And so it's now trying to get that going again. And it means, in a sense, having to come up with new approaches, because I think we're so accustomed to a youth group and the youth group existing, whereas youth ministry now has moved away from the youth group, not saying no to the youth group, but realizing that youth ministry must now entail all the youth in the parish, right? To the point whereby all the youth can therefore be involved in the various activities such as SVP or charismatic or whatever, so that at the end of the day it's not just a youth group that just becomes, you know, that nuclear group that's exclusive, but that it becomes an inclusive, you know, ministry where everybody is involved and everybody is participating and everybody, you know, is getting involved in other ministries of the parish.
We'll come back to different angles, and this is a Catholic perspective looking at the season of Lent. We'll take a break, catch your breath, and be back with the discussion.
The Diocese of St. George's in Grenada presents its 2022 series of Lenten Mission, March 21st to 25th, 7 p.m. nightly. This year's mission will be guided by the theme, "Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me," reflecting on the scripture, Matthew 25, 31 to 46. Mark your calendar, Monday, March 21st, Sacred Heart, Petite Martinique. Tuesday, March 22nd, St. Patrick's, Hillsborough, Carriacou. Wednesday, March 23rd, Christ the King, Grand Roy. Thursday, March 24th, Blessed Sacrament, Grand Anse. Culminating on Friday, March 25th, St. Martin de Porres, Roman Catholic Church, Crochoux, St. Andrew. The 2022 Lenten Mission, March 21st to 25th. We look forward to journeying together. Streaming live on all Good News Catholic Communications platforms. The Diocese of St. George's in Grenada presents its 2022 series of Lenten Mission, March 21st to 25th, 7 p.m. nightly. This year's mission will be guided by the theme, "Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me." Welcome back to Catholic Perspective on Good News Catholic Communications. We are now joined by the principal of St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's. We have been discussing the whole issue of Lent, the observance, and that, you know, it takes a lot now to get ourselves into it daily, and the concern that not many seem to be journeying. But we do have a number of Catholic institutions throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. And we have a principal who is joining us via Zoom. Good night to you, Mrs. Philbert Vivek.
Good night, and a special good evening to the other panelists. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
You've heard the discussions since we've started. What's your thoughts on the fact that many are not feeling the Lenten observance, and what more do you think Catholic institutions can do?
Okay, many of the points that were made before by Father Ronald, by Kimala, and so they're very pertinent in terms of COVID-19 and what persons have experienced with being locked down. And each individual responds differently to the stress of COVID, of being locked down and so. So over the last 2 years, for some people, they didn't even know when the season changed. So maybe that's one of the reasons why over the last 2 Lenten seasons, people have lost some sort of interest. And because we are not able to interact in the way that we normally do, we were not able to go to church as we normally do, we have further lost that sense of Lent. Now, I must commend Good News Catholic Communication for this initiative tonight, because this discussion here is raising awareness. What they have done, they've really stepped up. You have really stepped up in the last couple of years, going virtual, bringing the Lenten mission online and all of that. So we didn't just sit back and say, well, it's Lent and, you know, we cannot go physically to church for the mission. All right. So those have helped. But because of that disconnect, and we're speaking about disconnect a lot, where you're not actually going into the physical church, that I think is one of the reasons why, you know, the season is not as observed as it is before. You also mentioned the media. All right, we do not have that, the secular stations promoting Lent. And one point Mr. Hopkins made, we have to introduce or reintroduce that in the media, maybe a mid-morning program or something like that. Not because we have our own radio station where we do the program, but we must also be present in the other stations. Now, I have noticed and I have experienced myself, as Catholics, we do not tell the story to our children. Mm-hmm. So, yes, my mother lit a candle when she went to church. My mother died when I was about 21. She never told me why she lit the candle in the church, but I know you just have to light the candle. But our children now has to know why.
Yes.
And we need to tell them why, so that they can understand why we do what we do, and they will continue the tradition. So as a principal, as a teacher, I realize that if we don't tell them the story, they don't know it and they don't get it from home. All right? So in our school, we try to keep the Lenten observances as we knew it as students, as was passed on to us from the sisters that we encountered. Mm-hmm. So we still do have a Lenten retreat every Ash Wednesday, where we have retreat directors coming in. We may do it on a class basis or on a level basis. So we gather all the fours and fives together, all the threes together, or we have individuals going into the classroom where there is this reflection on the pillars: prayer, fasting, almsgiving, and the distribution of ashes. So that is standard. That's how we start the Lenten period. And then all classes on assembly throughout the Lenten period focus on a different aspect. All right, so daily, and we have daily assemblies. Daily, the students are given bits and pieces. And yes, we have a diverse population in terms of religion, but we don't focus on the fact that it's a period for Catholic observance. Yeah. We look at conversion, how the Lenten season encourages you to change, turn away from sin, and be a better person. And that will bring you closer to God. All right. Apart from that, we look at how we can really bring out the main pillars. So for example, the fasting, yes, you know, children don't really fast. So what we have is fasting from sugar. So every Friday, then we only sell water at the tuck shop during break time. They know they can't ask for juice. All right, so that they're fasting from water, and we have the Lenten tins around the school at the tuck shop at different areas where they are encouraged. What you did not spend on the sweet or the drink, you can put it in the tin. We also make it a point of letting them know at the end of the Lenten period what we are going to do with the alms that you have given. So this year we said at the end of the Lenten period, we are going to give to the sisters, the missionaries of charity. All right, and that will go towards what they do, because they do a tremendous work daily feeding the people who are less fortunate and all of that. So, and with that, it raises an awareness. So yes, it is a Catholic observance, but for the other religion, you're looking at giving to the persons who are less fortunate.
Yeah.
All right. The assemblies also would incorporate the Stations of the Cross, and at the end of the term, well, you know, things are different, so we're getting back into it. This is the first time in 2 years we've actually been in school for Lent. So each class would be given a different station to dramatize. So in our final day of school, we have a bit of dramatization in which each class will be given a different station. So at the end, we'll have the 14 stations being dramatized, and it raises some sort of awareness. Because as I said, some of the children, they do not get that at home. Even the Catholic students, some of them don't have that at home. Okay, I mean, believe it or not, if you ask a student, some of them, you know, who Mary is, and they don't know that Mary is the mother of Jesus.
Wow.
Okay, so yes, things that we take for granted, things that, you know, you think that everybody would know, it is not the same in every home. Okay, I remember having a conversation with Miss Let during Advent. You know, we prepare the students in the same way you have the Advent retreat and all of that. And according to tradition, during Advent, it's just Advent. You must not go into Christmas. But I said to Miss Let, we cannot let the students go home without giving them the Christmas story. Yes, we're focusing on Advent, but we need, who would tell them about Christmas if we do not? Because by the time we come back to school, we're in a different mode. We've switched gears. I'm saying that to say the students, our young persons must be given the story. They must be told the story, and the church has to make a concerted effort to give them that story. Father Ronald spoke about the Sunday school, very important. That's when the instructors will break it down for them so that they can get the story. And when they get it, when they understand it, they can then pass it on when they are adults. Because if we do not do that, then all of what we hold dearly would be lost eventually.
Wow. Yes,
I
yes.
would like to ask a question, Mrs. Filbert.
Yes.
What would you suggest, or what ideas? I'm just thinking that, you know, Catholic institutions, Catholic schools, but what about Catholic institutions that may not have the majority being Catholic teachers? Would that have some impact on how the students or feel the seasons, the Catholic teaching?
Just before Mrs. Filbert answer, from my knowledge, Father Ronald can correct me, even if
The greater percentage of the staff is not Catholic, the head teacher or deputy would be Catholic. So there would be Catholic influence. Mrs. Filbert?
That is correct. All right. So the administrators, principal, vice principal, and so must be Catholic. So the onus is on the administration together with the board. Well, the manager, if the school has a manager, and the board in the case of St. Joseph's Convent and TBC. And so we have a board who we are responsible for Catholic education. All right. So even if the majority of the teachers are not, we have to lead the way. We know that this is Lent, and this is what we do during Lent. We are going to organize the suit. And in coming into the profession and coming into the school, the teachers are made aware that this is a denominational school, this is what is expected. Are you willing to be aligned with what we do here?
I want to add also that it has to be deliberating even at the staff meetings. So in preparation for the season, you introduce the season at the staff meetings as well. So teachers are aware and they also are on board with the Catholic aspect of things. I want to add another spin to it with the other religions in the Catholic schools. I took the approach of letting persons know that what we're doing is no different from what you're doing as well. You're just expressing it in a different way.
Yes.
Exactly.
We are in Lent, but you can find Lent even in your church. You are calling people to conversion. That's the season of Lent. You know, Advent, the whole essence of Advent, for example, is what, for example, the Adventist church is all about. So, and I also say to them that every religion, you can find it within the Catholic Church.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you. Generally, I must say that the teachers who are non-Catholics, you really won't know that they're non-Catholics.
That is
They come to church, they pray with the children, they prepare them for the morning assembly.
That
You know,
is
so
true.
it is. This is not an area that is of concern. You know.
Thank you, because just to mention the Venda Marcy Nativity, they mourned the passing of a teacher that was buried on Thursday. And throughout the teaching fraternity, they are saying you would never know she was not Catholic. She was so much into the school and into what needs to be done and into supporting whatever is done. So I know, and I want to congratulate all our Catholic principals and teachers that they are doing and for what they continue to do. So to me, based on all of the discussions, which I'm going to invite the guests again, I am picking up two, separated church, I'm picking up two aspects of maybe even everyday life into religious life. The passing on of the faith, as Mrs. Vivek pointed out, some of the students or children do not have that sort of support at home. And we are dealing with a post-COVID era. And that is having an impact on Lent. But we still cannot sit back and say, well, there's an explosion of freedom. We still have to try to get people or the church to journey during this time. Lent won't be over until Holy Thursday. So we still have a lot to do. As Mr. Hopkins said, engage the secular media, get all the groups within the church to do something. Whether it is with a small group, whether it is an adult group, whether... So, in reference to passing on the faith and cushioning the impact of COVID, what's your thoughts, Mr. Hopkins?
On Saturday at the liturgical workshop, we focus on the book of Exodus, that journey. And it is a journey where we experience or we are made aware that God is always seeking us out. God is always journeying with us throughout this. Kamaya said earlier on that we are coming out from a lockdown. The people of Israel came out from slavery and they're into the wilderness now. And in that wilderness, they start to grumble. They start to have problems. All kinds of things happen. They feel, what, you bring us here to dead? But we continue on that journey. Moses, the leaders continue to guide, continue to push the message. Yes, we're feeling the pinch of it, but we're not going to give up. We're on that journey together.
So then the hope is, as we continue and as we try, we would gradually, not perhaps go back to how things used to be, but maybe close enough?
Yes.
Close enough, or if not, maybe in a sense being open. I think this is a time whereby we're exploring how can we make new what was done in the past? How can we take different approaches to it? How can we, inject maybe new life? If it can't be changed that much, how can we inject new life into it? So I think we're at that stage whereby, we're now beginning to sort of explore this and to see, in what ways can we get people back to church and back to faith and journeying together on this faith journey. So it's a beautiful time, I think, in terms of how do we explore and how do we find new ways to bring life to our faith.
Ms. Vivek mentioned something that before we saw things happen, and we just got the message. Now our children want an explanation.
Yes.
Why are we doing that? And during the wilderness period for the people, they wanted to know why are we doing this?
Yes.
Exactly.
Why
Exactly.
why are we here so long?
When
We
are we
question
going to
those-
reach the promised land?
Exactly.
So that would be perhaps one of the reasons why young people who are very active in the church, now that they have this freedom as we speak about, they don't want to go back because they didn't know why. Well, I guess they probably had a hint or a tint of the concept. You collect, you go and you do this, you practice it because we need to change your body. But mommy is behind you, right? But now that perhaps mommy is no longer there, you just sort of go back. You're doing what you want or so. But as everyone said, this is, I guess, a learning curve.
But explosion or not, emphasis has to be placed on responsibility of parents to pass on the faith.
Earlier on, we did say, if the parents don't know, how are we passing on this
What you
now?
mean they don't know? I knew
What
by
about
my
young
parents passing
parents?
down. Him knew by his parents
But remember,
passing down.
remember, Betty Ann, that was your experience. We're dealing with a lot of parents now who don't know, and one of the things I think the synod, I think it was made in one of the comments. The synod now I'm realizing a lot of one of the issues coming out in the synod is that there is a need for catechesis. Right, we need to get back to catechesis to help our people to understand the faith, and to deepen the faith, because they're faced with, number one, yes, we have those who didn't know, they just went along, and now we have a situation where there are those who want to know, but there's no way to pass on that information. And I think so. It has to start even with our liturgies in the context of the Mass. There are many people who come to Mass and they go through the ritual, but do they understand what it is? Each aspect of that ritual is. Are they entering into it? And so we have to get back to that part of maybe helping. I don't know how to do it. We have to find a way to see how we can help people understand the ritual, because you don't want to take away from the mystery of the ritual, but at least to get to that point of why do we, for example, why do we kneel? Why do you genuflect when you enter the church? Why do we
So would you say that our communion classes and our confirmation classes are not impactful enough?
I wouldn't say they're not impactful. I think maybe we just have to find new ways. I'm coming back to this whole point of how do we get the faith across in a way that persons can better understand and appreciate, and in that way enter into it.
Betty, as Father is saying this, how do you answer the question why? Most of the time the answers come when you have an experience. Oh, now I understand why I'm doing this, because I feel it.
Right.
I've experienced it. So we have to reach a point where we have an experience of church in a different way.
And one of the things I want to stress too as well is the fact that I think we also have to find people, we also have to help people have a relationship with Jesus.
Yes.
I think it's one thing to say, I know God. It's a whole different reality to say, I have a relationship with God. And it is in that relationship that the experience will then speak loud. I think we have to get, I remember one or two persons making that point to me. They were saying that, they would come to church, yes, but somehow or other they didn't have a connect with Jesus, and it's only in a sense somehow I think through an experience or encounter that they really got to know Jesus in a deeper way.
Which underscores the need to be involved in a group in the church.
I was just about to highlight this in the Paul Society, because it is said that this is spirituality through action. So you go about, and of course the challenge is, of course, getting the people involved in the group in order to go out and evangelize through action, so to speak. But when you do that, people realize, you know, this is what Christianity is about. You give, you share, and it's not about, St. Vincent de Paul is not just about going and giving someone some food. No. There are often times, if you look at some of our programs and projects, we have taught or assisted people in terms of getting employment, forming their own little venture. There are sometimes we go just to pray and do visitation with the elderly who feel lonely. So it's a lot.
And earlier on I referenced the existence of the groups within the church. In connection to cushioning the impact of COVID, I don't know if it's a cultural invasion, but there's also the aspect, because let us compare. Had Lent fallen directly after Hurricane Ivan, people would have been without electricity, without their roofs, they would have seen the need for prayer, they would have been wanting to be part of a group. But it comes at a time where you have the smartphones, you have WhatsApp, you have Facebook, you have TikTok, you have Snapchat, you just list them. The young people have these things, these gadgets, and these, and young adults, all of us.
But you'll find as well that at the end of the day, as much as you have all of this, one of the things that COVID has also thrown into our face is the fact that, yes, you know, we have these gadgets, you know, but eventually people started getting tired of them because, you know, to have to say, it's like, well, some people don't, but like, I can tell you, for example, I'm sure you can tell me the students.
Yes,
students they just got tired of the screen, you know, and they were glad to get back into school and glad to be, you know, in each other's presence. So I think, in a sense, as much as one may say, fine, you know, at least in COVID we were able to use the screen. I think it has also taught us that, you know, we're beginning to realize that we need each other, the physical touch, the physical connect, as opposed to, you know, the screen that, you know, all you can do is just see the person, but you can't connect in the context of that spiritual connect.
And another aspect is the whole issue of, I don't know, I'm not saying it's only Grenada, but society generally across the world. Oh, let me speak to Grenada. Correct me if I'm wrong. Society seems to have lost that sense of season in itself. They're fetting from January 1st to December 31st. By the side of the road, in every bar, the back music, the bus tours, it's just an explosion. COVID again?
Yeah.
Freedom?
Freedom?
You really think it's COVID again?
It's COVID, it's freedom.
But what can possibly be?
Remember, you're talking about somebody who has been locked down, who can't move, who can't do, who has restrictions, wearing masks, etc. You couldn't have done anything. And so all of a sudden now, in a sense, the restrictions are lifted. Hello? I want to be able to be free. I want to be able to relax. I want to be able to enjoy.
To be incarcerated.
Exactly.
But you know, Betty, you mentioned Ivan, right? The response, human response to Ivan was different.
Definitely.
If you notice, during that time when we didn't have the technology, what happened? We came together more.
In the moonlight.
So, we went to sports.
On the steps.
We had those kind of things. Because that's what we had as to bring back that semblance of
normality. In a sense, right?
No, we've been locked down. We are doing just that.
So you want to tell Bishop Clyde Martin how you can't observe Lent because
no, we're not saying that. We're not saying that.
I'm joking.
You know, as Father mentioned, Pope Francis is saying, it's not just about going to the religiosity of the season, but thinking of myself. What is it that I choose to reflect on during the season of Lent? What is it that is deep within me that I want to reflect on to help me to grow deeper in my relationship with God? I've been trying to do that. I've started, and even the very thing that I say, listen, I'm going to try hard, not.
Yeah.
It's a journey again.
It's a journey.
And what if, in a sense, maybe, yes, this particular Lent, you know, we are not having the impact is that we should have. What if maybe by next year Lent, you know, it might be a whole different experience, because now that we've come out of lockdown, people are beginning to reconnect and life is getting back to normal in a sense. You know, as we get back to some form of normality, you know, come next year, you know, because the human being needs Lent. we need that, seize that time of year in which, you know, we can, in a sense, get back to some sort of, get into a reality whereby we retreat into ourselves, go into a quiet space, you know, be able to you know, see where we are going wrong. And so we need that. And so, in a sense, maybe, you know, even if we may not experience it this Lent, all right, come next year Lent, you know, the organizations, the church, can begin to prep people and prepare people. Pray God, we don't have a war, a wider experience of the war.
But we have to agree the church has to have a different approach. It can't be the same, just a notice, just
no.
Right.
It has to, we have to find a way to begin to prep people, to understand, to even to begin to lay the foundation for us going into the season of Lent so people can truly enter into it and participate in it.
Okay, we're going to take some of the comments as we prepare to wrap up the discussion. You know, it was 4 o'clock, we continue all now, but it's almost 9:30. So,
well, basically, most persons are sort of agreeing with some of the points that we'd have made, especially with regards to COVID. Someone brought out the point of the mental health issue that we need to deal with and the need for that physical connection. Something interesting that I read on there is someone said that in the groups, remember you asked about the groups have now, they have become ministries. So there's a different thinking.
Right.
No, well, I think that's a problem, Father. I don't know if you're seeing it. So you had youth group, SVP, Mothers Union, but now instead of having those groups, you have lectors group, that group, but they are not church groups per se.
Right.
The groups are those. There's a term for that. I think
those are liturgical groups.
These are liturgical groups that help service the liturgy.
Right.
But you have the other groups that are responsible for the livelihood of the church members. It is supposed to help you to grow personally and help you to minister to others. So the SVP out there, that's one of the things someone is saying on
I think we need a revival in these ministries. In all of these ministries, they need to fight. But the revival has to be not so much, not on the basis of saying this is what we used to do in the past. Is there a way by that ministry can take a look at itself and say, as Dave has said earlier, Mr. Hopkins has said earlier, you know, going back to your roots in terms of the values, what was it that helped to found you? And from that perspective, how can you take a new look at, you know, bringing those values anew in the context of what approach or approaches can be used to bring that to life?
Someone is saying, and they've said it twice, that we need to take a deep dive into the synod. Right. So that we can find ourselves more and really really get to the point where we would like to I
think the synods have been going well, at least in the parishes that I am helping with. The synods seem to be going so well. Some people don't stay, some people stay, some have stayed, right? You know, but you can hear that there's a lot of what you call thought processes coming out, you know, but what does come out as well at the same time is the need for catechesis, you know, in terms of helping people to appreciate, to deepen the faith and understanding of the faith, you know, and how can we do that? So I think once this section or aspect of the synod is completed and we move now to gathering all the information and pulling it together, I think that will be one of the key themes coming out.
Well, we are on a Lenten journey which began on Ash Wednesday on the pillars of prayer, fasting and almsgiving. I want to thank each and every one of my guests for taking the time off and coming to dialogue, you know, on the season itself. And I know a lot of points came out. You know, responsibility of parents, responsibility of church, the cushioning the impact of COVID-19, you know, that reality, the distractions, the music, the noise, the festive, I mean, however, the church is in a Lenten observance and the discussion, I'm sure, created a lot of awareness out there. I thought we would have had more of our Zoom participants making their comments and suggestions. So as we prepare to wrap up, I'll start with Mr. Hopkins and go this direction. We ask you for your final thoughts and comments. How do you think? Because irrespective of all of the prevailing conditions and factors, we are in the season of Lent.
Okay, yes,
so
we are.
What can your final comments?
My comments to end the show, and I really thank you for allowing me to be here. One, Lent is also a personal journey.
Yes.
And we each one of us need to take that personal step to look at ourselves and how much where we are on that journey. That's one of the things I would want to say.
And without cutting you across, should the church find a way to engage parents?
I would say yes.
We should find a way to engage parents, and I think some of the ideas came up during the conversation we've been having. One, we talk about bringing back that the catechesis, you know, finding ways to touch them. I mean, the same media that we have, we can use that as well. The PTAs are for Catholic schools. PTA. We can go to those sessions as well. You know, we can
from the preschool level.
Yeah,
exactly.
The church has about two or three
preschools, then primary schools.
I know we're closing, but somebody made a point on the Zoom that we should not blame COVID because the church was declining already. And I think we need to make clear our focus was not really on the decline, but really on the awareness of the season, generally speaking. You know, but I will go back to the point that each one of us need to reflect on our own journey and see how best we can enter into the season and get the graces that it has for us.
Thank you. Yes.
I would also like to join with Mr. Hopkins because he took what was in my mind. I said, you know,
you're stealing from the word.
No. Of course, thank you for having me here, but also it is a personal journey seeking God. And I would like to invite the young people to, during this Lenten season, to volunteer time. Let's try one thing, and the one thing I'm asking you is not to stop at meat or don't play games, but volunteer your time within the church. I invite you to join the SVP group, but volunteer.
You have to pay me for that promotion of pay Good News Catholic for that promotion of SVP.
No, but really, because it's spirituality through action. So if you just do one thing, and you know the youth, they say they like to be active. So this is something you can create programs. You can help visits.
How would you recommend helping young people to come into that Lenten observance?
That is
a tough question.
That is the question I'm still reflecting on.
Okay.
I'm still reflecting on that, and I think when I do get the answer, I think I will come back to share
but
it. But
to the person who mentioned about the church is on the decline, I mean, this is not just a church issue, you know. I mean, let us look at the young people who are fighting and the delinquent behavior. It's a whole societal shift. And I'm not too sure how and when it's going to be put that tectonic plate back together so no earthquake can form. I really don't know, but it's not just a matter of church. Yes, Father Ronald Holder, because we can't keep talking for the rest of the night.
I think at the heart of it is helping people to reconnect with God, helping people to have that deeper relationship with God, helping people to be able to reconnect with one another. The mental reality is a key issue, and we have to address that because we can't ignore that. You know, so many people have been through a lot in these last 2 years and are still going through a whole lot because you're dealing not just with the thought process of who may have COVID, because COVID is still with us. You're dealing as well with the question of the finances, you know, the cost of living, which has skyrocketed, and salaries remaining, you know, the same or next to nothing, right? You're dealing with the possibility of war, right, you know, in Europe, you know, and what if that war widens, the context of possibility of a nuclear war, right? So all of those are in the back or minds of people, and we have to I think, be able to let people know that God is here. God is still in control of his world, not us, and we have to find a way, we have to allow people to reconnect with him in a deeper way, to trust him, and in that way, the way to do that is getting back to church, getting back to some of the values that are so important in this, you know, and helping to lift people up on their faith journey.
So there you have it, Catholic Perspective, discussing the season of Lent. We had Father Ronald Holder, OP, Diocesan Youth Coordinator, Kimaya Francis. It was a pleasure to have a young person in on the discussion. Mr. David Hopkins from St. Peter's RC. Thank you for your valuable contributions. All those who commented via Facebook or Zoom. The principal of SJC St. George's, we want to say a heartfelt thank you for your participation. We take this opportunity to remind all our listeners and viewers of the upcoming Lenten mission, which starts at Petite Martinique on Monday, then to St. Patrick's, Hillsborough, Carriacou on Tuesday. We come down to Grand Roy, Christ the King on Wednesday, Blessed Sacrament on Thursday, and St. Martin de Porres on Friday. So there you have something to look forward to. I know a lot of parishes are sending out WhatsApp sharings, flyers. So we want to encourage you, parents and teachers, in whatever way you can, to remind children. I mean, I reference one terminology, the cacophony of the marketplace. There is a lot of noise, but we are in the season of Lent. Jesus Christ made that sacrifice. And as the song said, come back to me. It is the wilderness that would lead you to your heart, where I will seek integrity and justice. The journey continues, and we continue to pray that by some means, whether it is a WhatsApp, the flyer, the Lenten mission, we will reach someone out there. So maybe we have a greater task. If every person who listens go and encourage somebody else, and that person go and encourage, we're going to make a chain reaction in this noisy festival world. But the whole issue of mental health and post-COVID, nonetheless, we are in Lent. There's a hard-working gentleman behind the scenes, Mr. Dwayne Francique. We want to express our heartfelt appreciation to as well. The entire communication unit of Good News Catholic Communication, Bishop Clyde Martin Harvey, we thank you for seeing the need to branch deeper into communications. And one point we are definitely going to take, we have to engage the secular media in this whole journey. I mean, I miss the old journalists of Lou Smith and all these sort of people that would tone the music down. I mean, the whole issue of the buses and then is another topic for a whole night, and the kind of loud music they play. But to all who listened, to all who viewed, this is the awareness that I want to remind each and every one of us that we are in the Lenten season. Thanks for being with us, and we look forward to sharing another program with you in the not too distant future. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
The Diocese of St. George's in Grenada presents its 2022 series of Lenten Mission, March 21st to 25th, 7 p.m. nightly. This year's mission will be guided by the theme, Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me, reflecting on the scripture, Matthew 25, 31 to 46. Mark your calendar, Monday, March 21st, Sacred Heart, Petite Martinique. Tuesday, March 22nd, St. Patrick's, Hillsborough, Carriacou. Wednesday, March 23rd, Christ the King, Grand Roy. Thursday, March 24th, Blessed Sacrament, Grand Anse. Culminating on Friday, March 25th, St. Martin de Porres, Roman Catholic Church, Crochoux, St. Andrew. The 2022 Lenten Mission, March 21st to 25th. We look forward to journeying together. Streaming live on all Good News Catholic Communications platforms.
Keep us apart. plus